Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, pretty, yet deadly. The warmth of it all was intoxicating. Her heartbeat went crazy as the blood was trickling down her face, onto her chin, and down onto the marble floor. Why did this feel so good? Why was this easier and easier? Addicting. The crowd cheering made her feel the world spinning around her, like that one time she tried drugs. Would this be just as hard to give up on like the drugs as well? The constant craving for that feeling, but not the aftermath. She wondered what the aftermath would feel like. But for now, there were still 4 more people she needed to worry about before she could think of tomorrow's reality. Standing over the corpse, Alex just now noticed the gruesomeness of what she did. This was a hate fight as well. All that mocking in the back rooms, all those invasive touches and stares that made her feel violated. Growling, she smacked her head with her foot, the crack of her bones making Alex almost gasp in pleasure. She was dead, and this was her punishment. Now her pretty white dress that Kira mocked her for was stained red with her blood. A strap was ripped, but she didn't care. The pretty girl won, turning towards the crowd. Her eyes were sparkling with adrenaline, euphoria taking over her as she smiled bright and bowed before skipping off the stage. This wasn't the contest she signed up for, but it was the contest she was going to win, no matter what. "Good job, sunshine," Damien muttered as she passed by him, smirking. "Thank you, kind sir. See you in the finals." With a wink, she passed him. She knew he was going to win the next fight, so that made the two of them. Going back to her changing room, people were already waiting for her, ready to clean her up, prep her hair, and change her dress. But the blood was going to stay untouched, just like any other small wounds. It was their medal to go in the next round. Alex wasn't used to any of this, especially this type of medals that showed their passing. Usually, it would be a pin or some tacky golden star. This was nothing she prepared herself for, and from the introduction, no one was specifically prepared for it. If they had the luck in their life to get in any physical altercation and win, that was a plus. It all started with some pretty faces, nice bodies, and preppy clothes. But this was so much more now that she was so deep into it. As she left herself in the hands of the people in the room to take off her clothes and take care of her, she couldn't help but wonder how she came this far, how she started to enjoy that gruesome stage that was now bathed in blood, the lights all over them, the masked crowd enjoying every second of it. 2 hours ago, there were 20 people. Now there were only 3. Her long red dress with a slit down from her thigh, down, low cut, both back and the front, was long gone. Alex loved that dress, and she loved how it showed off her curves and long legs. But now it was long destroyed. Glancing over to the side of the room, on a rack, there laid all her torn-up dresses that she wore since all started. Whoever won was going to have their battle clothes sold. A token of this contest. The money going towards the winner. The thought of people buying ripped up and bloodied clothes made her wonder why people would spend money on such things. But she soon realized why. All those dresses were now tied to a battle, to a crime, and success at staying alive, being the hunter, not the prey. A token from the battles, and a piece of the contest itself. They were still calling it a contest, not just a fight until death. If they wanted help in the last round, they needed to win the hearts of the crowd, voting each round on who would win, and then at the end of each fight, keeping scores. It was a system from 1 to 5. They revealed what would happen at the end. The one that got the highest rating would mean they are the public's favorite, which would bring its benefits. Not sure of what that meant. They knew it must be something good, so they needed to put on their best face, even as they killed brutally. Some of them sadly forgot this was a contest in the end, and the votes counted, so Bruce ignored it. He thought only of the end goal, killing everyone in order to survive. The crowd wanted foreplay. They wanted dirty fights, but with fair chances. The girls never fought against the boys, not until the finale round. They wanted the thrill of a long, bloody fight, hearing them growl and cuss with each new wound, with each new bruise and cut, seeing them fight for their lives, seeing the growing desperation as one of them realized this could have been the end, and tough decisions were going to be taken. Bruce wasn't aware of it, and snapped the opponent's neck in a matter of seconds. He saw a weak point and took it, finishing it all without giving the crowd what they wanted. The silence after that was morbid. No reaction from anyone, just Bruce in the middle of the scene, arms spread, wanting to challenge the world itself, feeling invulnerable. What he didn't know was that no one liked that, and they were ready to challenge him back. Red buttons lit all over the room. Alex could swear that she saw those red lights flicker inside the crowd's eyes, thirsting for the blood they didn't get. He got one from everyone. If just one person would have given him another score, he could have survived. But those were not the rules. Tied up, every participant still alive was meant to wound him, not fatal, but in an appealing way that would make the crowd tremble in pleasure. That, or they would join his faith. Whoever had the highest score in that round would get the best prop for the next round. Kira won it by being her slutty self, yet she still died. Looking at the dried blood under her nails, the image of her nails dragging down on Kira's face made her shiver. What did she become? From the first round lamb, she now became a cheetah. She was fast and agile, thanks to the years of gymnastic her mom forced her into taking when she was 6. It was now paying off. What would her mother think of seeing her like this? Knowing her little baby killed and killed and killed? Maybe she didn't have to know. All was good. She was alive, and she could be hugged by her mother away. A long, nice bath, washing away all the blood, and together with it, her sins. She would go to church. She would wear her most modest white dress and braid her hair like her mother did ages ago when they would go there. "You are good to go, princess." The woman smiled gently towards her, just like a grandmother. Kind eyes and deep wrinkles next to her eyes when she would smile. She looked so out of this picture, and yet she was the one that cleaned the blood off and nurtured her wounds. If she could look at her with this kindness, even after knowing and seeing all she did, her mother will as well. She loved her, her little angel. "This is suiting." Alex exhaled as she stared at herself in the mirror. An angel. Another white dress, long and flowy. A pair of wings and a sparkling tiara. The blood wasn't even bothering her. It looked like a second skin now. A piece of her, something that she shall never be able to wash. Always seeing it stain her in the mirror. The next thing she knew was that she was back on the stage, face to face with Damien. Dressed as the devil itself, black shirt and burgundy vest, shiny shoes and black pants, tiny red horns on his head. He was beautiful, she had to admit to herself once again. And if this was a normal contest, she could imagine herself at the end of it, with him at her side, arm around her waist. Both winners, prizes in their hands. A pretty image. But there was going to be just one winner, and the prize would be their own lives, still being alive. "You look angelic." He laughed, his fingers gently tracing her face in the eyes of the crowd. Smiling, she placed her hand over his, keeping it on her cheek. So warm and gentle, making her insides wrestle inside of her. The thrill she felt as she won. But those long fingers were going to soon strangle her, digging deep into her, wanting her dead. "You look devilish yourself." She smiled as she placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. So close. She didn't want this. She wanted to be done with this bloodshed. But it was her or him. Getting close to him, their lips gently touching. She gasped as he kissed her back, his hand on her neck, pulling her closer. This was what the crowd wanted, right? A show. To see them suffer. For them to feel their pain while they weren't losing anything. A love story would make this so much better. A cliché. But it was a cliché because people enjoyed it, always watching it. Kissing harder, she moved her hand towards her wings, detaching one, grabbing tight. Before she left the dressing room, the showmaster brought her another pair of wings, congratulating her on her scores and her new prop. One glance towards the old lady, and she realized what it meant. She saw her assemble the wings, so now she did the opposite, cutting her hand on the blade, grabbing tight on it, and lifting her hand, she stabbed the wing deeply in the back of Damien, just as he used one of his horns, stabbing her in the back as well. Both collapsing on their knees, neither of them stopped the kiss, becoming just more intense as the crowd gasped. It was just a matter of time of who would bleed faster, who would turn cold. They were going to die in their own way, and they were going to wait. Witness, she saw him. She saw him get killed. She saw the life drain out of his eyes. She heard his screams of pain. She heard the footsteps of the murderer as they ran away. She felt a tingly sensation course through her. She felt a tight knot form in her chest. She witnessed it all, but no one believed her. Not a soul, but she knew it had happened. Her eyes couldn't have betrayed her. She wasn't dreaming, nor was she hallucinating. The rasping of the man's final breaths and the crimson blood were all too vivid for it to be a figment of her imagination. She was there. She was watching. She was witnessing. She had approached the body, hands trembling. The man lay in a pool of his own blood beneath her feet, his body peppered with bullet wounds. His glassy eyes were rolled back, showing only the bloodshot sclera of his eyes. Her fingers were numb as she had dialed the number of the police. Her breath was shaky, and her voice was uncertain. She told the officer on the phone what had happened. "May I ask what your name is?" The officer had questioned. She responded softly. A moment went by. Her eyes widened as the officer started to laugh. "Nice try. Don't joke that much. We all know murders are implausible." The officer had drawled before ending the call. The phone fell out of her hand and landed with a thud on the ground. What was the officer talking about? She clutched her heart with both of her hands and fell to her knees. What is going on? Her head was spinning. The ground around her started to spin as well. The lifeless body was still in front of her, her clothes and hands now soaked with blood. No. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Why did the officer hang up so abruptly? Why was the officer so ignorant? She stood up and started to walk away from the body. She needed help. She needed to ask someone else. As she turned around, she saw a young man walking by. Her feet dragged her towards him. "Please help! Please help me!" Her cries were loud, and she collapsed onto her knees. The man immediately turned his head. "What's wrong?" he asked, his eyebrows cocked in annoyance. "Please, there has been a murder. Someone has been killed. I saw it all," she begged, her voice desperate and cracking. The man's eyes lingered over her for a moment. He scoffed. "This isn't funny. Joking about death is despicable." He shook his head as he walked away. "Please," she called out weakly, grasping for the man's hand, but it was out of reach, and her hand fell to her side. Tears streamed down her face. They tasted like salt and regret. "Stop. Stop it. Stop crying." She kept scolding herself as she slowly stood up. "Stop being weak. Make them believe you. They must believe you." She hurried back to the scene of the crime. The knot in her chest tightened even harder each time she saw those lifeless eyes. It was as if they were chiding her, tormenting her. She grabbed her phone from the ground, making sure it was still functional. She wanted to call the police. She should call the police. But what if she got in trouble? What if they didn't believe her again? She shut her eyes as pain filled her body. Her words had failed her once again. Her mouth refused to open, refused to fight back. How weak she was. She crumbled to the floor in tears. After all, that was what she was best at, crying. All she could do was cry. She couldn't even stand up for herself, couldn't even prove something. And she hated herself for being so useless. Her mind was swirling with thoughts. She couldn't swallow, nor could she speak. Her throat was dry and hoarse. She still knew she wasn't dreaming. This is real. She is real. It had to be real. But why didn't anyone believe her? Why was she never given a chance? Her breathing started to slow down. Her tears lessened. What if it is a dream? But in my dreams, who am I? Where am I? Her reality felt distorted and warped. Nothing seemed real, yet nothing seemed fake. She reached up, trying to grasp something, trying to find something tangible to provide her some certainty. Maybe she was nothing. Nothing at all. Maybe she was as thin as air. No. thinner than air, as unreachable as the heavens, as unbelievable as the gaping chasm of hell. No, no, she had to stop. No, she knew this was real. She couldn't push the truth away. She still had to face the truth. Truth is something no one can evade. What was wrong with these people? Were they just merely stupid? Or oblivious? Or did they just not care? Why did they not believe her? What had she done to make them so against the thought of murder? She had so many questions, but no answers. But there was only one way to elucidate these questions. Slowly, she dialed the police again, with trembling, frail, bloodied fingers. They picked up. "Hello? I'd like to report a murder," she begins once more, telling her story. "All right. What's your name, miss?" the officer asks. But before she can respond, the man cuts her off with a chuckle. "Just kidding. We don't need your name for a prank." She opened her mouth to protest, but the call ended. Slowly, she pushed herself up, wobbling a bit. She took a moment to stabilize herself, then inhaled sharply. Her eyes were closed, and her face was pointed towards the blue, blue sky. Her eyes slowly opened after a brief pause, glimmering under warm rays of sunlight. "My name," she began quietly, swaying gently with the wind, "is Elora Bathory." She giggled, then disappeared into the shadows of an alleyway, twirling a gun in her hands. Murder in a dream. Halvar sat in his office, browsing the police file of suspects and cursing his brain for not remembering anything regarding the incident. The doctors told him the blow to his head was severe. It gave him a concussion, after all, and that it might take time for his memory to come back, if it did at all. "Hall?" Without turning his eyes from the computer screen, he waved a hand. "Come in, Siegfried." His assistant walked into the office, placing a hand on Halvar's shoulder. "How are you? Still can't remember anything," he said, scanning the faces of every known criminal in Norway. He recognized a few of them, having captured them himself, but none rang a bell as to whom might have killed two of his friends and placed one in a coma. "He's got to be here somewhere." "Hall, you should rest," Siegfried said, placing a cup on his desk. Steam rose from it, spreading an invigorating scent of coffee. "We are looking into every possible avenue. I have to regain my memory," he said, scrolling further. He had to. It was the only way. He must have seen the killer just before the hit on the head knocked him out cold. His mind held the only real evidence they had, the only evidence to help turn suspicion off of Halvar himself. Siegfried sighed and retracted her hand. "We talked to Olaf, the studio owner, again. He said he left the place early that evening and didn't see anyone but you and your friends coming in. Nobody else was scheduled for practice either. The single security camera caught no one else entering the building. That camera's position is awkward, Halvar said, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't slept in a day. He didn't like what sleep brought. The killer could have entered through the back or by the window. Did Olaf tell you about his back door? How he's too cheap to have it repaired? Anyone could enter. In fact, could the man himself be responsible? He did complain often about the noise of Halvar and his band playing, even though they paid to rent his studio for practice. Hall, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I know how close you were with them, how much music meant to you. I hope that Bjarka makes it, and I hope you get some rest. Halvar sighed and listened to Sigfrida's footsteps leaving the office. The cup of coffee rested on the desk, smelling heavenly. He turned to say thank you, but his assistant was gone. Instead, he noticed the pictures on the office walls, his formal detective license, a photo with the whole police department for Christmas 2 years ago, and a framed picture of him and his 3 friends playing live at a local festival. 2 of them were dead now, 1 in a coma, the result of some lunatic bursting into the studio and killing everybody. Halvar himself survived by sheer luck, it would seem. I'll find out who did this, he thought, turning back to the screen. And no law or moral code can save them from me when I do. He spent the rest of the night searching through the files, as well as his memory, both seemingly void of the information he sought. Eventually, sleep caught up with Halvar, and with it came the nightmare. Each night since the incident, he had been having roughly the same dream. It was almost as if his mind was trying to tell him through dreams what he couldn't remember consciously. Halvar got to relive the murder of his friends every night for the past 2 weeks. He got to see every bloody detail, but never the killer's face. That detail always eluded him, and with each dream, he thought he was getting closer to the truth. Each time, the nightmare would reveal a bit more of what happened. That was if his mind wasn't just making everything up out of trauma. In the dream, he was often in the killer's shoes, after all. But he could never see his face. This night, the dream started as usual. Right in the middle of it, and from the point of view of the killer. Halvar saw himself as the murderer, picking up his guitar and crushing his friend's head with it. They were in the middle of practice and were stunned at the sudden outburst of violence by the intruding killer. Before anyone could react, Halvar smashed the heads of all 3 of his band colleagues with his own guitar. Then the dream shifted, where he could see outside from himself, how he got hit on the head too, by a figure without a face. The prosecutor then ran away, and when Halvar wanted to follow, the figure disappeared into the shadows. Halvar woke up, sweating and breathing heavily. He looked around and noticed he had fallen asleep in his office. The place was dark, no light coming from the hallway. Everyone must have left already. He grabbed a pen and paper and wrote down everything he could remember from the dream, recording every detail. The drawer by his desk was filled with accounts from his dream, and he used them to correlate the event, searching for consistent patterns and hints. As incredible as it seemed, his dreams were the only clues he had. But he couldn't share them with his colleagues. They would never take it seriously. The killer used my guitar, Halvar murmured, comparing tonight's dream with the others. But the last thing I remember was playing on my guitar. Then, nothing. So, whoever did it, I must have trusted them to let them have my guitar. The evidence found at the crime scene clearly pointed at Halvar's guitar as the murder weapon. It had blood and tissue of all 4 of them on its body, all found on one side, suggesting that the killer used it as a club to repeatedly strike at each one. The guitar's body was solid steel and hard plastic, and it cracked under the brutal hits, but did not break apart, surprisingly. So the killer must have known how strong the instrument was, so he could perform precise strike with it and not have it break in the middle of his assault. That would create an opening for the others to defend themselves. The only person that Halvar would entrust his instrument to, and who would know so much about it, other than his band friends, was Olaf himself, the studio owner. Halvar even once took lessons from the man, who showed him a few tricks on the guitar from his heyday as a roadie. It wasn't rational to think that Bjarka would take the guitar, kill the other 2, attempt to kill Halvar, and then knock himself out. How would he do that? And it was just as absurd to think that Halvar himself did it, as was the unspoken suspicion. How would he swing the guitar at himself, knocking himself out with it? The angles didn't match, but the blood and the concussion did. Somebody else must have been present there that night, and the more Halvar thought about it, the more he suspected Olaf. The studio was his. He had access to the camera. The band knew and trusted him. He did complain about the noise, but was that reason enough to attempt a quadruple homicide? Or was there something else? A form of jealousy against Halvar and the band? Olaf did say that he never had a chance to be in a band, but that it was his greatest wish. Halvar checked the clock. It was something past 3 a.m. He considered, looking at the photo of him and his friends. Then he left his office. Olaf's house was next to his studio. It was part of the same building complex, just on the other side, so the owner had privacy as well as quick access to the place. Halvar sat in his car, parked outside the man's house. There was a light turned on inside. Olaf was the one that found us, Halvar thought. He came into the studio and called the police. In the report, The man said he had heard shouts and how the music suddenly stopped. So he had gone to check. The more Halvar considered, the more sense it made. The man pretended to have stumbled upon the murder scene, to have an alibi. Halvar waited in his car, considering whether he should confront the man, considering if he could even do it. As he waited outside of Olaf's house, the pain in his head from the blow returned. Halvar took some painkillers and watched the window, wanting to catch Olaf in some act that would rat him out. In a whirlwind of thoughts, and with a headache pounding, Halvar must have fallen in a pill-induced sleep, as suddenly his mind was back at the incident. This time, he saw more of it. "That sounds terrible, Hall," Bjarka said, grimacing on the drums. "Are you sure you can play the guitar, mate?" Halvar ignored the remark and focused on playing the solo. They were working on a new song, and it was a pain to get it right. "Sounds to me like he's butchering somebody," Damus, the bassist, commented. "Must be the stress at work, I reckon." They laughed. Typical guy talk. Halvar tried his best, but failed. His fingers were just too slow. The solo too technical and complex. His mind was sluggish, indeed from stress at work. There was a dangerous killer on the loose, and they had finally gotten a lead. Halvar just wanted to relax and let go for a few hours with his buddies. But all he could think of was the brutality of the recent murders. "Hey, we're going to get something to eat," Bjarka said. "You want something, Hall?" "No," Halvar said. "I'm good." He just wanted to get the damn solo right. "All right then," Bjarka said. "But don't you try and steal my roles when we come back." They left. Halvar kept practicing. Then Olaf entered the studio. "Hey, mate," the older man said, wearing his long gray hair in a tail. "Sound like you're having some trouble." "Yeah," Halvar said. "I can't do this transition here. It's too fast for me." Halvar showed what he meant by playing the part at half speed. Olaf nodded. "I see. Can I try?" "Sure," Halvar sighed. He handed the man his guitar. "Knock yourself out." "I'll knock you out, with my veteran skill," the man said, and took the guitar. The dream then changed to Halvar being in the killer's shoes and butchering everybody, until seeing himself in third person again, being hit by some man with no face. Halvar ran after the man, and this time he caught him in a corner. The man had long hair. Halvar jolted awake. He was sitting in his car, parked outside of Olaf's home. The light in the house had turned off. "It's him," he thought, breathing heavily. He did it. Halvar got out of the car and walked to the studio entrance. He had the key, as he and his friends were regulars. It was the little hours of the morning, and there was nobody outside, not even a stray dog. Halvar unlocked the door and removed the police tape, entering the crime scene. He knew that the studio and Olaf's house were connected by a passage for practicality. Halvar used the light on his phone to make his way through the dark interior. If it really was you, Olaf? Halvar hurried through the passage, entering the man's living quarters. He'd been there once or twice when Olaf invited them over for a drink. Building his alibi. Plotting, even then, Halvar crossed the living room and climbed the stairs to the man's bedroom. He didn't think of what his plan was. He just wanted to have a look at the man, to see his murderous face. As he came to the bedroom, where he saw the light coming before, Halvar paused. He heard weeping from inside. His heart pounded like a drum, and he burst into the room. Feeling guilt for what you did, the man, lying under the blankets, jumped up in shock. Halvar turned on the light and noticed he had taken out his gun on instinct. Olaf gazed at him with wide eyes, red, as if from crying. "What? Don't deny it! You did it!" Halvar shouted, his hand trembling. "I saw you! It was you!" The man's face was twisted in a mixture of shock and fear. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you in my dream," Halvar said. "You took my guitar, and..." The man was crying. There were candles placed on his windowsill, alongside pictures of Halvar and his friends. The two that had been killed had a rosary around them. He was grieving? "What's all this?" Halvar asked, pointing at the pictures. "They were my friends too," Olaf said. "Your band reminded me of when I was young." His gaze focused on the gun in Halvar's hands. "You think I did it. It wasn't a question, but a statement. One in which Halvar wasn't so sure anymore. He looked into the man's eyes and saw sadness underneath all the shock and betrayal. "I can't prove it, Hall," Olaf said, sniffing. "But by God, I'm not the man you should be pointing that gun at." "Who then?" Halvar shouted. "Who did it? Who killed my friends and nearly killed me?" He pointed the gun at the man's head. Olaf began weeping. "The guitar was in your hands when I found you." "Yes, the killer wanted to confuse the forensics by framing one of us. No one else came or left the studio. Hall, what are you saying?" Olaf glanced at the gun again, then at Halvar. "Are you here to kill me too?" Halvar balked. Olaf pissed himself, a dark spot appearing on the bed sheets. The man was genuinely afraid of him. Halvar suddenly felt deep shame, and he lowered the gun, running out of the room and out of the house. "No, it can't be," he thought. If Olaf didn't do it, who then? He started the car and drove back home, where he took a bottle of scotch and began drinking. He demanded from his mind to remember all of it, to remember things clearly, without dreams and illusions. His head began hurting, but he didn't take the pills. They would only distract his mind. Halvar emptied the bottle and paced around his room until he collapsed in a corner and wept for his friends. Once again, sleep took over, his body and mind exhausted. This time, the dream picked off as his friends returned with the food. "Where have you been?" Halvar asked. They were gone for nearly 2 hours. Bjarka giggled like a schoolgirl. We went to get food. They all had red faces and were snickering like teenagers. Have you been smoking weed? No, Demas said. They snickered some more. Halvar sighed. We were supposed to practice tonight. You should chill, Detective Oyolf, their lead singer said. You can't play that guitar anyway. He turned to the other two. Hey, maybe we should cut his hair. If he can't play, then he's not a true metal fan and shouldn't have long hair. The three laughed, obviously talking gibberish, but Halvar, being frustrated by his stressful job, having to deal with murderers and psychopaths all day long, just wanted to lose himself in the music with his friends. But for some reason, couldn't get the creative juices flowing, and had enough. Something snapped. He grabbed his guitar and began playing. The guys turned to him. Whoa, look at Hall. He's on fire. Halvar played the solo with fury. He struck every note on the spot. Yeah, man, that's the thing. Then he came to the hard part. He followed Olaf's instructions and sailed through it, racing to the finale. Seems Hall's been practicing while we were smoking. Halvar's muscles tensed as he got to where he always failed. He struck the notes, one by one, the pick flying over the strings. But his fury was too much. He broke a string, and the guys giggled. Halvar smacked Bjarka straight in his laughing face with the guitar. The man fell over like a chopped log. Then he hit Demas, who was too stoned to register what was going on. Halvar repeatedly hit the man's head until it cracked, and the guitar strings vibrated from the impact, playing a sinister echo. Oyolf wanted to run away, but Halvar chopped him down by hitting his side first, and then smashing the man's head. Breathing heavily, feeling all his frustration boiling in him, Halvar screamed and headbanged into the guitar's body repeatedly until he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The dream shifted outside himself, and he could see Olaf stumbling upon the aftermath. Mortified, Halvar jumped up on his feet as the doorbell rang. His fists were clenched, as though he still held the guitar, and he breathed heavily, confused. He was at home. He just woke up from a dream. Someone was at the door. Did I really kill them? Halvar ran a hand through his sweaty hair and walked to the door. He took one deep breath and opened it. It was Sigfrida, with 2 other officers by her side, Halvar's colleagues. Hall? She said, her voice painful. Yeah? He groaned. Bjarka woke up. We have some questions. A family man. Chill wind blew down the long asphalt street in Palestine, Texas, picking up sud-like dust and limply turning over dead, dry leaves. The town was tired and quiet. Only a handful of pickups drove leisurely down the street. Jason Lynn, Pennsylvania, sat behind the counter of Americo Bank, shiny shoes propped up in his neighbor's empty chair, white collar unbuttoned, killing floor open on his lap. His head tipped back against the rim of the sleek swivel chair, snoring. He was the kind of man who would go bald early, but not care. The kind of man who'd get a tattoo at 40 to prove he was cool. The kind of man who was actually cool, not because of the tattoo, but because he told good jokes. Pennsylvania owned the Palestine branch of Americo Bank, but did most of the hiring, telling, and counting himself. Cheaper this way. He'd tell Americo's division manager on the phone, "But ain't you a family man?" The manager would say. The manager was a Wichita Falls man who'd grown up taking out the trash for Americo and worked his way up. Most of his underlings liked him. He had a snaggletooth and uneven sunburns, and went on jogs in the morning in bright orange jumpsuits. Yeah? But this is how you take care of a family. I got the boys to think of. Well, okay, son, you take care. Thanks, bud. Bye. Pennsylvania jerked awake when the clock chimed 8 and smacked his lips. Killing Floor slipped off his lap and bounced on the ground, which startled him. He looked over the counter, saw nothing, leaned back, and closed his eyes once more. Outside the bank, on the dry, dusty street, a little banged-up black Toyota parked crooked on the curb. The Toyota sat in the shade cast by the big stone bank, cooling off with little pings and a long sigh. Then the doors unlocked, and 5 teenagers got out. The driver was a tall boy with white hair. The girl in the passenger seat was short and smiley. The 3 others were triplets, all boys with sandy brown hair and identical grins. One of them had a backpack slung over his right shoulder. They looked at each other timidly, almost fearfully, like a group of seamen about to push off from shore and never see home again. One of the triplets said, "You sure you want to do this, Jack?" "Of course, moron. You scared?" The triplet shrugged. "It just... well, Penn's a fun guy. You know he was the one who brought watermelon for the potluck on Thanksgiving?" "Yeah," said his brother. "Where'd he get that?" The 3 brown-haired boys burst into laughter. They knew where he'd gotten it. He'd told them the day before the potluck. Penn was like that. "Shut up," the girl said, shoving one of them off the sidewalk. "Ouch, Callie." "Okay then," Jack said, running a hand through his white hair. "Let's go." The group entered the bank, easing open the glass doors without a whisper. Behind them, dry leaves scraped across the concrete sidewalk noisily, pushed along by the wind, which always seemed to be going nowhere. The 5 of them spread out, looking dead ahead as they pulled hoodies over their heads and scarves or a parent's bandana to cover their mouth and nose. Jack and his crew edged forward over the burnished granite floor. The triplets exchanged worried, excited glances, eyes crinkled up to betray identical, gleeful smiles. Jack and Callie closed in together, shoulders touching like the ranks of Roman soldiers. Jason, Pennsylvania, dozed behind the counter, the calloused fingers of his left hand barely brushing the spine of his book. Jack whispered to Callie, "Where the hell is he?" "Bank's open, right? Duh. Maybe he's on a break or something. He'd have left someone behind if he just took a break." Jack leaned over the counter and jumped back as if bitten by a rattlesnake. "There he is," he hissed. Callie forcibly turned one of the triplets around, unzipped his backpack, and removed a gun. "Whoa," the triplet whispered. "Is that thing real?" "Hell no," Callie said, smirking. "It's just a toy, an airsoft gun. Looks real. I took the orange thing off the front of it." The boy looked at his two brothers. "Isn't that illegal?" Callie smirked again. "Damn right." They winced and said together, "Stop swearing." She looked like she was about to hit them, thought better of it, and turned around. "Sorry to injure your little church-going ears," she said out the corner of her mouth. Callie walked right up, the three boys behind her, like three toddlers caught stealing cookies, and slammed the fake gun on the counter. "Wake up, old man," she shouted, and lifted the gun so it pointed at the banker. Pennsylvania jerked awake and pushed his glasses back on his nose. He started to stand, but Callie shouted, "Turn around! Hands up! I have a gun!" His jaw dropped, but he did as she said. "Callie?" he asked. "Callie Roberts?" Jack shouted roughly. "Turn the cameras off right now." Pennsylvania shrugged, his hands still up. "I don't keep 'em on." "Open the door," one of the boys said in a thin voice. Callie elbowed him sharply, and he cleared his throat and said more firmly, "Open the door." Penn started at his voice, but turned and walked to the door between the bank lobby and behind the counter. Slowly, he pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. He returned the key to his pocket, hands shaking slightly, as the 5 kids ran past him. Their faces were bright underneath their masks, eyes shining, separating the group and fleeing to various half-open deposit boxes. Jack let out a maniacal giggle as he scooped handfuls of mostly counted change into his hoodie pockets and the backpack. "Why don't you lock these boxes up, old man?" he shouted. Penn shook his head. "I trust you guys," he said simply, hands in pockets. "What?" Callie said after an awkward pause. She and Jack laughed, but the triplets' eyes, barely visible over their bandanas, filled with tears. Their bandanas were bright green and stenciled with their dad's initials. JLP. Jack waved his crew out. Callie kept the gun pointed at Penn's head as they backed out of the bank, faces flushed with success. Just before the doors swung shut, Pennsylvania looked straight at the triplets. Their eyes met, 4 pairs of identical eyes. Penn gave them a short, sad smile. When the black Toyota had disappeared down the cold, empty street, Penn sat down again and called the police. "Hi, Rick," I was just robbed? Can you go after him? Yeah, a black Toyota, it looked like. I didn't catch the license, but it's the Hoover's car. Jack Hoover. Yeah, Hoover. Yes, Hoover. Thanks. And, oh, Rick, give him the whole speech, will you? My boys were in that group. No, not a kidnapping. I saw him, though. They know it ain't right. Just make sure they know it. I know they'll do right. I raised them right. Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it. Pennsylvania leaned back with a sigh. After a moment, without cleaning up the mess of bills and hanging open deposit doors, he picked up his book again. The Toyota tore down the highway, a trail of dead cottonwood leaves following. Callie drove this time, the needle not dipping below 70, and Jack sat in the back seat. Both grinned hard, masks and hoodies down. Hey, where's the backpack? Callie asked as Palestine disappeared behind them, and empty plains surrounded the lonely car. Jack looked around. I don't know. You don't have it? Their eyes met in the rearview mirror. Those three, she spat. Those... Ooh. Her hands clenched on the steering wheel. We shouldn't have dropped them off. We should have made them come all the way. They were wimps, she responded. I thought it was good riddance. And Mac hates kids like them buying from him. Her eyes narrowed down the highway. Think they got cold feet? I know so. They're probably gonna tell. What do you want to do? Callie shrugged. We got some in our pockets, right? That's probably enough. Mac doesn't like change, though. He said 20s or nothing. She sighed. Well, damn it, Jack. I don't know. I want to go find them and throttle them. We shouldn't have let them come along. It was an adventure for the kids, Callie said desperately. They wanted to do it, wanted to be the bad boys. Why am I trying to defend them? Jack snickered. They took our money, she shrieked. You know what I think? I bet they're taking it back to their dad. They glared at each other. I want to commit another crime, Callie said after a minute. This time, let's commit murder. Jack laughed, then said, Wait, are you serious? She nodded. They put in life for a murder, not for minors. Yeah, for minors. She shook her head. It'd be worth it. I want to teach those bastards you don't cross your own teammates. A sleek police car sped far behind them, wind tearing through the open windows, light flashing, horns blaring. The driver sat intent behind the wheel as three brown-headed boys talked quickly over each other in the back seat. Citizens, death. She trembled uncontrollably as he pushed the muzzle into her forehead. Nobody moves or makes a sound. Any heroics, bullets will start flying. As you can probably tell, this is a bank heist. Cooperate, and I'll spare you all your lives. Please don't kill me. I'll take you to the vault right now. Shut it. I decide when we go, he replied as he jarred her head back with the barrel. The hostages looked on in slouched postures, with furrowed brows and gaping mouths, wondering if the gun's magazine was loaded or not. for the bank manager's sake, they hoped it wasn't, and that he was pretending to have a loaded gun, because they believed this sort of heist was to scare people into submission with no real intention to harm them. After all, it was only one guy, not a group of robbers. "Hey, mister, my wife's so scared, her water has just broken," exclaimed a hostage. "We need medics, quickly. I said no heroics," he exclaimed, striking the butt of the gun to the bank manager's temple. She fell in a heap, motionless. "Now look at what you've made me do. I mean it, people. Don't try my patience, or one by one, it'll be you lot getting the bullet. Are you crazy? My wife is in pain. She thinks the baby is in the wrong position. We need a doctor now." He sighed and approached the pregnant woman and knelt by her side. She was shaking and sweating uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry about this, but I can't have you or your husband messing this up. There's $20 million in the vault, and I want some of it, no matter what the cost. Please, just take the money and go quickly. We'll say nothing to the police," replied the woman. The bank manager opened her eyes. She sat up, propping her back against the wall. All she heard was 2 shots fired, followed by a cacophony of screams and chaos. He fired another shot to the ceiling, and the room fell silent. Order was restored. "Right, you lot, clean the blood up, and then drag the pregnant woman and her husband over to the far corner," he demanded. "Are you fucking crazy, man? You've killed an unborn baby and the mother and father," exclaimed another hostage. "In this game, there's always collateral damage. Now shut it," he said, training the Glock on him. He glanced through a window. The street outside Citizen Bank was as normal as he'd expected. So far, 2 minutes had passed since he'd entered the bank. There was another 5 minutes before the NYPD would have the building surrounded. So far, so good. With the entrance door locked, nobody had approached or tried to enter the bank. Still partially dazed, the bank manager attempted to stand. She stumbled, but he soon skittered back to her and pushed her to the floor. "Stay down until I say otherwise, got it?" He slid the rucksack from his back and pulled out a large bag of cable ties and tied her hands behind her back. Then he tied her legs, leaving enough movement for her to walk, but not run. With 2 less hostages to not worry about, he made quick time in using more ties to bound the other 8 hostages. "Okay, people, if I hear the slightest of sounds or sense the smallest of movements, one of you will be joining those bodies over there." He hauled the bank manager to her feet and pushed her in front to lead the way to the vault. She stumbled and fell to her knees with a hard thud. He grabbed her hair and wrenched her back to her feet. She screamed, and the hostages felt her pain. In retaliation, she spun and spat in his face. She quickly felt the back of his hand make contact with her cheekbone. It sent her tumbling for a second time, but she didn't get up. He didn't let her. Instead, he grabbed her hair and dragged her to the vault. The hostages winced, imagining her discomfort as her legs flailed in a futile attempt to stall him. Now that he's down in the vault, we have to do something? Whispered a hostage. He looked mid-30s, with a physique of a guy that worships a gym. Are you out of your fucking mind, sir? You heard what the guy said, right? If you can cut me loose, I can take him. I'm ex-military. Apprehension is my forte. I've got a small knife in my back pocket. Can you reach it? You're gonna get us all killed trying to be the hero. NYPD will be here soon. They'll take him out. Only if someone has activated the alarm. There were moments of silence. He was waiting for a reply that never came. I thought not. But the guy keeps checking his watch, and he thinks they're on their way. I can activate the alarm so the cops know, and then I'll take him out. No, man. You're not hearing me. I can't let you do this. I've got a wife and kids. He'll shoot us all. What do the rest of you think? Are you with me? The rest of the hostages didn't respond. You try anything, man. I'll take you down myself. Just trust me, man. It's worth a try, replied a hostage. He's trained. He knows what he's doing. The locks released. He turned the catch, and the door to the vault swung open. What the fuck? He said, staring into the barrel of a Glock 19. You didn't tell me there was security in the vault, he said to the manager. She connected with his gaze and dropped her shoulders. I ain't security, replied the guy standing at the entrance of the vault. Stop what you're doing, and nobody else has to get hurt. It was a stalemate situation. Both guys had their guns trained at each other, fingers twitching at the triggers, and then, bang, the guy in the entrance to the vault fell. He was soon surrounded by a pool of his own blood. He began to load as much cash as he could into the two large holdalls by his side. He could hardly zip them up, but to his estimation, he had at least $600,000 in each. Way less than what he wanted, but enough to start up somewhere new. With one bag on his back and the other in his left hand, he grabbed her hair with his right and dragged her back to the main foyer, where he noticed one of the hostages was missing. From out of nowhere, the hostage charged toward him, thigh and drived him to the floor, like the New York Giants were playing out in front of them. They tussled about, but the hostage found himself being overpowered and had the barrel of the Glock shoved in his mouth. Bang! All the remaining hostages jump out of their skins as blood and bits of brain matter splattered all over them. The hostage lay there in a bloody, gory mess that was too much for most of them to look. Hey, mister, we tried to tell him it was a stupid idea, but he didn't listen, replied one of the hostages. He's paid with his life for his insubordination. He checked his watch, and 4 minutes had passed. Time to check out. The manager is coming with me. Inform the police I have her as my hostage, and any attempt to intercept me, and she gets the bullet, right? Exiting the Citizen Bank, He threw the holdalls in the trunk of his General Lee, while the bank manager got into the passenger side. He put the pedal to the metal and sped his way along Valley Stream. There were no police in sight. Perhaps the NYPD had other emergencies, he thought. He took a left and followed the sign that was heading for Brooklyn. "Okay, Max, you can stop calling me the bank manager now," said Elizabeth. "And you didn't have to be so rough on me. It had to look like you were another hostage. I just hope when you shot that guy in the vault, you were obscured from the cameras so it looked like me. But how did we miss that guy? I think I did good shooting him, but too many mistakes were made this time. I should have accounted for the guy in the vault." "Yeah, but you dealt with him pretty quick. From how we played it out, the cops will think you were innocent. But what about the hostage that thigh and drived you? If you hadn't have got the better of him, we wouldn't be here now. We've got enough money, and I don't have to work in a shitty bank anymore." He took another left and entered on to Interstate 678. He leant over to the passenger seat. Their lips engage. "New life. Here we come," she said. The plunderer's bank robbery and waltzing have a lot in common. Both have defined rhythms, and they're better with a partner. After waiting my turn, like an everyday customer, I handed my note and a paper sack to the blonde girl behind the counter while pulling back my sport coat to show her the butt of my pistol. The note read, "This is a robbery. Remain calm so no one gets hurt. Fill the sack from your drawer. Have a nice day." When she scanned my note, her eyes bulged and flicked from side to side. Her frightened blue peepers filled with disbelief as she stared at me to see if this was a prank. I smiled like a friend. "Please fill it up." With trembling fingers, she stuffed bills into the sack as if she'd win a prize for the fullest bag. The gorilla behind me noticed something wrong. Maybe the sweat-gouging channels through the quivering blonde's rouge tipped him off. He grunted and grabbed me in a bear hug, pinning my arms. My Marine training kicked in, and I stomped the arch of his foot with the sharp leather heel of my polished Oxfords. He winced and loosened his grip. This gave me enough slack to reach behind and twist his balls. He yipped like an injured puppy and let go, slowly sinking to the floor. The bank patrons turned to stare at the commotion. Unsure what was happening, I reached through the teller's wicket and yanked the half-filled sack of money from the blonde's jittery hands. As my assailant rolled on the floor, grabbing his crotch, one of the suits in the back reached for a phone. "Time to go." I strolled out of the bank before anyone attempted to jump me. Outside the bank, I wanted to run, but nothing attracts attention more than a man running from a bank with a bag in his hand. The alarm clanged, and I turned towards the bank like the other pedestrians, plastering a puzzled look on my face. A siren wailed in the distance. Sweat beaded my forehead, and I lengthened my strides short of a power walk. When I reached the corner, white exhaust flowed from the red Edsel coupe, and its big V8 growled, ready to whisk me to safety. I jumped in the passenger seat, and Marge drove away at 30 miles per hour. 2 police cruisers screamed past us in the other lane. Now, we'd have to ditch this flashy car in case anyone noticed it fleeing the scene. Marge and I have been robbing banks since I got out of the Marines in '53. My posting to Korea separated us for 3 agonizing years. And when I got back to the States, we promised each other we'd never be apart again. Although we talked about it, we never got married. We both felt that a piece of government parchment would not make us love each other any more than we did. When our cash ran low, we'd find a suitable bank in a small town, make an unauthorized withdrawal, and live comfortably on the proceeds for a few months. As long as we didn't take too much or go to the well too often, the local cops forgot us, and the FBI had enough problems with organized crime to worry about a small-town bank robbery. We never hit the same town twice. Our life between jobs was quiet and measured, spending the winter in Florida, soaking up the sun like other tourists. We danced every Saturday night and fished the local lakes. Marge loved the fall colors, so we spent September in New England before turning south for the winter. I don't remember the name of the town in Minnesota when we ran low on cash. While Marge gassed up the car, I got us a table in the Moosehead Diner. Over the blue plate special of corned beef and hash, I decided I wanted to go fishing. Margie, I've been thinking, it would be a shame to be in northern Minnesota and not go walleye fishing. How about we rent a cabin after this job and go fishing for the weekend? Marge placed her napkin on the table and pursed her lips. Okay, Harry, but all the cabins are probably rented. I reached for her hand. This is the end of the season, and we'll find a cabin somewhere, just for the weekend. Then we'll head for Vermont. She squeezed my hand and ran her thumb over my knuckles. We'll need some bait. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We'll stop at a bait shop and pick up some minnows. Or, if you'd rather, you can watch me fish. She removed her cat's eyeglasses with the fake rhinestones and leaned over the table. Not on your life, Buster. You fish. I fish. And I'll catch bigger fish. Just you watch me. I finished my coffee, left a $10 bill on the table, and wiped the crumbs off my tie. I'm going to the little boy's room, and then to work. As I walked across the street to the Imperial Bank, Marge parked the car around the corner. We took the North Road out of town towards Canada and doubled back south on a series of gravel concession roads. Navigation was Marge's job. When we hit the interstate, we turned east towards New England. The cops must have figured it out, or got lucky. They'd had 10 years to learn out our pattern. When we turned onto the interstate, 2 police cruisers, nose to nose, blocked our path to freedom. Blue and red lights flashed, and cops leaned across the hoods, pointing shotguns at us. 2 more cruisers pulled out of a side road and blocked our retreat. Marge slowed as we approached the roadblock and parked on the shoulder. A cop with a bullhorn yelled, "Get out of the car and lay on the ground." Marge turned off the ignition and gripped the wheel with hands at 10 and 2 while staring out the windshield. "Goodbye, Harry." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Goodbye, Marge." I drew my pistol and shot her through the ear. Blood spattered the windshield and side window as she slumped on the driver's door. I put the pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. Murder at Kasserine Pass. Murder at Kasserine Pass. The Bo-Chebka Road, deep inside the Kasserine Pass, narrowed to little more than a camel track along a dry riverbed and steep cliffs. Rooted in the pale sand, a grove of palm trees jutted out from the ground as if thrown down and forgotten long ago. The remnants of the U.S. 26th Regimental Combat Team used the shade of the palm trees to dig their foxholes. Covered in sand and blisters, men hacked until the exposed roots of the palm trees aggravated their progress. Collapsing, exhausted, they lay where they fell, swollen tongues aching for water. Lieutenant Myers walked among his men, giving words of encouragement, and promised water would arrive when teams returned from Ain Boudrias up the road. As an officer, he thanked and encouraged his men for their hard fight against the Germans. He hoped fresh troops, supplies, and ammunition would arrive by the next morning. But he couldn't make promises. Around 2 in the morning, a mule train arrived with water, and Lieutenant Myers saw every man drank his fill. Some even vomited after they drank too greedily. Others, familiar with working in the heat, sipped slowly and intentionally. Lieutenant Myers lay down in a foxhole as exhausted as the rest and drifted off to sleep. At 04:30, Sergeant Thicket woke the lieutenant for him to walk rounds once again. Walking from foxhole to foxhole, he leaned over and checked his men. In the dim light, low in the eastern sky, his outline became visible among the tall palm trees. Approximately 05 o'clock, a single shot rang out far to the left of his position. Lieutenant Myers clutched his chest and dropped to the ground. Confused men, roused by the shot, began returning fire into the vast, empty valley in front of them, thinking they were under attack. Less than a minute later, the firing stopped, and the medics pronounced Lieutenant Myers dead. Captain Williams' Task Force. Welvert, February 21st, 1943. Criminal Investigations Division, North Africa. I surveyed the ground where Lieutenant Myers lay after he'd been shot. It's possible a sniper took advantage of the early morning light, but further examination of the body suggests the shot came from much closer. The bullet struck the lieutenant on the upper left side of his chest. Damage to the heart and lungs, terminal. Some witnesses report hearing one shot while others heard 2 or 3. The additional shots could have been an echo or edgy trigger fingers, as reported to me. Everyone began furring into the valley below. Furring stopped in less than a minute. No further casualties. Witnesses report the shot sounded nearest the last foxhole in the line, manned by Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson, Private First Class Andrew Taylor, and Private Jacob Clark. Interviews to follow. Suspect: Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson. Staff Sergeant Anderson. Witness say they heard a gunshot this morning from your foxhole around 500, said Captain Williams. Did you fire that shot? Captain Williams said, challenging him. No, sir. I heard a shot and thought the Germans were attacking, so I turned and looked around for them. I didn't see anyone, so I jumped out of my foxhole and ran along the line and told everyone to stop firing. Sergeant Anderson leaned forward, waving his hands in innocence. We are already low on ammunition, and we'd need it later if the Germans did attack, he said. Were you aware that the shot fired killed an officer? Asked Captain Williams. No, sir. Not until the firing died down. Rumor spread it might be an officer. I found out later, just like everyone else. Sergeant Anderson said. Were you alone in your foxhole, Sergeant? No, sir. There were 2 men with me, Private Taylor and Private Clark. They were sleeping, sir. I had the last watch, said Sergeant Anderson. Are you sure neither of them were awake and slipped away? Then maybe they fired the shot? Asked the captain. I'm sure of it, sir. I thought the shot came from behind me, and when I looked, I couldn't see anyone. It's possible a sniper hid on the hillside next to us. The sound of the shot may have been further beyond that, but these canyons are pretty steep. The explanation sounded plausible, but Captain Williams still didn't believe it came from the enemy. Captain Williams pivoted one last time and pointed a finger at Sergeant Anderson. Sergeant Anderson, don't play games with me. Our witness said it came from your foxhole. It had to be you, Private Taylor or Private Clark. Which one of you did it? Sir, I don't know who fired the shot or where it came from. All I know is, while I stood my post, I heard a shot. Sergeant Anderson said, more agitated than before. Captain Williams knew men like Sergeant Anderson. These were the men who would do all they could to protect a green recruit. He knew they'd cover for the new guys who were gun-shy or overeager to shoot. The possibility of an inexperienced soldier with an itchy trigger finger shooting the lieutenant thinking he saw the enemy. It was possible. He knew he'd never get a confession out of this man. Men like this were a rare breed in the army. Sergeant Anderson, we've been at Bao Chebka Pass all of 18 hours. Everyone's tired after yesterday's fallback. We lost a lot of good men, and stragglers are still coming in across the line. These things happen. People get tired or confused, and no one really knows who they're fighting with every day. Is it possible you, or a man with you, mistook the lieutenant as an enemy soldier this morning? No, sir. I'd just met these men last night. I'd have known if anything were wrong, and nothing looked out of sorts. If there were anything, I'd have told you," said Sergeant Anderson. "That will be all, Sergeant. You're dismissed, and I'll be in touch if I need you. Captain Shugart is taking over your company." "Thank you, sir." Suspect. Private. First Class. Andrew Taylor. Private First Class Taylor. "I am Captain Williams with the CID. "Do you know what the CID is?" said the captain. "Yes, sir. The CID is the Criminal Investigations Division of the United States Army, sir." "Very good, soldier. You're young to be a PFC. You've done well in the Army. I expect you'll be a corporal before long." "Yes, sir. I served in junior ROTC in high school. They gave me a bump in rank when I enlisted," said Private Taylor. "Wow, junior ROTC. You have the makings of an officer. Do you think you will try to be an officer someday?" asked the captain. "Well, geez, sir, I don't know. I've never thought about it much until the war started. I thought I'd have to go to college first," said Private Taylor. "No, of course not, son. Men of all ranks get promoted to second lieutenant. They're called field promotions. Have you ever heard of those?" "Well, yes, sir. I've heard of them, but I thought you needed to do something brave. I didn't think I've done anything brave yet." "Well, Corporal, it takes a special soldier, someone with real leadership, to get promoted in the ranks, especially to the rank of officer." Captain Williams called him a higher rank to gauge Private Taylor's reaction. "I'm only a private first class, sir. I have to wait a few more months to be a corporal." "See, there you go. Honesty. Honesty is an outstanding trait to have as a soldier. I think we should make honesty a prime factor in the field commissioning program. Don't you?" said the captain. "Well, I think so, sir. I think it would be important," said Private Taylor. "That's good, soldier. I'm really glad you said that. And that brings me around to a question I have for you. Did you hear the gunshot this morning?" "Well, yes, sir. I heard it." "Do you know where it came from?" "I'm not sure I know where it came from. It sounded nearby, but I couldn't be sure. I took the first watch and fell asleep around 2 a.m. "You were sleeping. You had a rough day yesterday, and we lost a lot of good men. We lost another man this morning. What do you know about that?" "Yes, sir. It was a hard day yesterday." Private Taylor rubbed at his eyes as if trying to block out the images. "I heard someone was shot, but I don't know much about it. Was it a sniper, sir?" "That's the rumor." "Is that why I'm here this morning?" asked Private Taylor. "Yes, Corporal. I mean Private Taylor. We lost a good man this morning. Lieutenant Myers died around 0500. The rumor is it came from a location near where you were sleeping. It's an unfortunate way to have a vacancy, but Lieutenant Myers died because of that shooting. Now we have a company without a lieutenant. We have a poor dead man who will never know justice. The truth will have to come out someday. If we could solve this mystery right away, things may just fall into place for the right person. Maybe even a new second lieutenant could rise through the ranks. What do you think about that? Private Taylor wiggled in his seat. He looked excited or uncomfortable. It was hard for the captain to tell. Honestly, sir, I woke up when the shooting started. I don't know where the shot came from, he said. Thank you, Private. I'll let you go, and if I need anything more, can I count on you to be honest with me? Yes, sir. Private Jacob Clark. Private Clark. I am Captain Williams, the lead investigator for the Criminal Investigative Division. Witnesses say you were near the location of the shot fired this morning that killed Lieutenant Myers. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I heard the shot. It was only one shot, said Private Clark. Do you know who fired the shot? Asked Captain Williams. Sir? Said Private Clark. The shot. Did you see who fired the shot? Asked the captain. I remember nothing. It all happened so fast, said the private. If you knew who it is, are you aware it is a crime to withhold information about the person involved? Yes, sir. Are you saying you know who fired the shot? Asked the captain. Sir, no, sir. It all happened so fast. Did you know that covering for someone is also a crime? Maybe you know who fired the shot, and you just don't want to say. It's called being an accomplice to murder, said the captain. The kid looked dumbstruck. I didn't know that, sir. Honestly, it all happened so fast. Did you also know there is a second crime being committed by the killer if they are threatening a subordinate to covering up a murder? It's called retribution. If someone you know is telling you they would hurt you or kill you for telling the truth about this killing, then creating fear of retribution is a crime. I didn't know that, sir. Yes, Private Clark. It is a crime, and a very serious one. We do not look kindly upon those who threaten retribution to subordinates. If you know anything, you are free to tell me. I will make sure you are safe from the one threatening you, and I'll have them removed immediately. Is there anything you'd like to tell me, soldier? I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you mean. I was in my foxhole this morning when I heard this rifle shot, and I jumped. I don't remember anything after that. Then everyone started shooting, said Private Clark. The young man looked sullen and weak. He slouched in the chair, staring into the distance, 100 miles away. Pacing back and forth across the tent, Captain Williams looked into the private eyes. He'd seen this before, after a fight. Unfortunately, the captain felt each man knew something he did or didn't want to say. Confessions didn't come easy. Captain Williams thought about a case 6 weeks ago where a junior enlisted and a captain fought behind a bar in Morocco. The enlisted man should have been court-martialed and the officer reprimanded. Turns out the two men knew each other from high school, and they fought over a girl they both knew. Neither confessed to starting the fight, and no witnesses came forward. The answer stared him in the face, but the guys covered for each other. Captain Williams believed the same thing might happen here. He released the private and stood at the tent flap, trying to piece together everything he knew. The men on the line were all lying to him. That much he knew. Kasserine Pass, February 19th, 1943, as Rommel's 10th Panzer Division plowed through the defenses covering the Kasserine Pass. The 26th Armored Brigade and the 26th Combat Team dug in along the canyons, running west towards Thala, Tunisia. The Americans put up stiff resistance, then withdrew. Hours of gunfire and hundreds of dead and dying littered the sand in their brutal retreat. Around 3,300 Americans were killed or wounded, and over 3,000 were taken prisoner. On the southern flank, Lieutenant Myers and the men of the 26th Combat Team held on as long as they could. "Lieutenant Myers, we need to get those men out of those holes and behind the tanks," yelled Sergeant Anderson. "Sergeant Anderson, you will leave those men where they are. They are the only thing between Rommel and Algeria. Do you understand?" "But sir, they are getting massacred out there. I just saw 3 men get run over in those shallow holes. They have to pull back." "Sergeant Anderson, I will not tell you again. See to your men, that is an order." As Sergeant Anderson left the lieutenant, his anger fumed. He ran towards his line and did what he could to check on his men. Those men left, held out as long as they could, as the Germans moved closer and closer. He knew they couldn't hold the line. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Myers carried armfuls of ammunition to his men until he ran out. His radio man died early in the fight, and the 2 men who followed already wounded. Grabbing the radio, he jumped into a crater and found a soldier lying on the ground. 2 men lay beside him, already dead, as this one stared into the sky. "Soldier, return fire," said Lieutenant Myers. "I can't, sir." The words came out in a hopeless tone. "I'm out of ammunition. We all are. That's how they died. They just ran out. Then they got shot." The exhaustion was clear. The battle raged on, and everyone fought on as best they could. "Lieutenant, what do we do?" he said pleadingly. "Private, what is your name?" he asked. "Private Clark, sir." "Private Clark, you are now my radio man. Get this thing working and listen for orders. Do you understand, Private?" he said. "Yes, sir." He struggled to talk from lack of water. He moved slowly, but he made it to the young lieutenant's side and grabbed the radio. No sooner than he'd picked up the handle, and he heard the words. "I say again, pull back, pull back. Lieutenant, they ordered us to pull back." The words came out in a half-shout. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Myers gave the signal for everyone to pull back. The Germans held nothing back that day. They took Kasserine Pass, and they intended to keep it. By nightfall, every man, not killed or wounded, pulled back to Buchebka Pass. The Germans came from the east, and Sergeant Anderson guided his men out of the fight. Lieutenant Myers directed them south and along the cliff walls. By midnight, they were digging in and waiting for reinforcements. "Private, get over here and start digging. 2 men per foxhole, all along this line. The rest of you follow with me," said Sergeant Anderson. "Sarge, "When do you think we'll get some water?" asked a soldier. "I'm working on it. Even if I have to take the lieutenant's canteen myself." All along the line, the remaining 110 men dug in and waited for anything that looked like help. Tank and truck noises echoed through the canyon. Everyone felt on edge. "Sarge, what do you think happened today?" asked Private Taylor. "We suffered a loss today, kid." His expression mild and disappointed. "We suffered a big loss today." Sergeant Anderson kept watch as Private Taylor and Private Clark dug the foxhole. Private Clark fell silent and moved at half the speed of Private Taylor. Private Taylor nodded at the sergeant. They both looked at the young man, struggling to keep sand from falling back into the hole. A look of concern and understanding crossed the sergeant's face. Taking the shovel from Private Clark, he began digging and let the man rest. He finished the hole and told the others to get some sleep. Each man took a 2-hour watch, leaving Private Clark last. Midway through, around 500, a shot rang out. "Private, what did you just do?" asked Sergeant Anderson. "He wouldn't let us leave. We were there all day. He had to die." The rest of the men opened fire. Then the shooting died down. "We can't go back. We can't." Tears left dusty tracks down his face. The poor boy cried. "What do we do, Sarge?" asked Private Taylor. "We keep our mouths shut. That's what we do. I'll send him back to the aid station when they get here. He's done." The author created the thoughts and characters. This is a story of fiction. The events related to World War II have some factual information, but most details are from the author's imagination. Who killed Amu's son? A loud scream pierced the stillness of the night, and it sent chills down my spine. I heard someone crying in the neighbor's house. The time in the clock showed 12:45 a.m. I was here at my aunt's house, enjoying a long vacation. After my final year degree exams, I knocked on my aunt's door, knowing that she must be fast asleep after taking her medicines. My aunt opened her door, looking worried and groggy. I heard some screams from the neighbor's house. "I think there is some problem. I am going there to inquire," I said. She said she would come too, as she didn't want me to go alone. It was warm and sultry outside. We started walking towards the house in the dim lights of the street, amidst the cloud calls of night insects all around us. My aunt lived in a small, beautiful village in Kerala, which was just an hour away from the city. Her only son had migrated to Canada a few years ago and wanted my aunt to join him, but she always refused, saying she was happy in her little village, surrounded by friends and relatives, and didn't want to be uprooted. The distance to the neighbor's house was not much. There were paddy fields all around, bordered by huge coconut trees, which were swaying in the mild breeze. It was a huge house, away from all the other houses that led to a long, narrow pathway connecting the main road ahead. The house belonged to Amu, a 70-year-old widow who had suffered a paralytic stroke. Few years back, since then, had spent most of her time in a wheelchair. Omna, a middle-aged lady, was hired as a nurse, come companion, to take care of her, and she lived with Amu in the same house as she had no family of her own. There was a cook and a maid who would come in the morning and leave by evening. The lights were on in all the rooms, and the main door was open. We saw Amu huddled in the wheelchair, weeping bitterly, with Omna standing beside her. As soon as we entered, Omna came running to my aunt. She was crying, her face contorted with fear, saying nothing we could understand. My aunt calmed her down, and I went to pacify Amu, who was in a bad shape. Through their sobs, we gathered that Amu's son was lying dead in his room above, and it seemed someone had strangled him. My aunt was too stunned to react, and didn't know what to say or do. We just stood there, watching Amu and her nurse clinging to each other and sobbing. By this time, some more neighbors walked in, hearing the commotion. My aunt told them what had happened, and one of them called for the police. The police came in quickly with a doctor who examined the body and declared him dead. They took charge of the body and looked around for fingerprints and other clues. There were no fingerprints, as if the killer had wiped it all after committing the crime. An ambulance was called in, and the body was taken to the hospital for post-mortem. The police came down to interrogate Amu and the nurse. Omna said around 12 a.m. they heard Dev, Amu's son, enter the house as he had his own set of keys. They heard some voices. The son was talking to someone, but they didn't think much about it, as he was in the habit of bringing his friends home, and they would have another round of drinks, which would go on till wee hours of morning. She and Amu then went back to sleep. Omna always slept in Amu's room, in case she needed some assistance during the night. After a while, they woke up to a loud thud and heard footsteps running down the stairs. By the time Omna came out, the intruder was long gone. She found the main door was wide open. Sensing trouble, she called out to Amu's son, but he didn't reply, and so she went up to check on him. Except for a night lamp, all the lights of his room switched off. He was lying on the floor, motionless. She went near him and saw some ligature marks on his neck. Being a nurse, she recognized those marks. She checked his pulse and found none. She ran down screaming. Amu was devastated to hear the news and had been sobbing since then. The police turned to her to record her statement, but she was in no state to say anything. They said they would come again to interrogate Amu. They sealed the room and warned that no one should enter the scene of crime. It's going to be a long night, so you can go home and sleep. My aunt said. I told her I'm fine, as I wanted to be with her. We stayed with Amu the whole night. She was sobbing and calling out to her only child. A doctor was called in, who gave her a sedative that soon took effect. and Amu fell asleep. It was nearly 5 a.m. when we returned home, and none of us could sleep anymore. My aunt made us coffee, and we sat at the long wooden table in the kitchen, discussing the turn of events. She looked perturbed. She said, "It's the first time such a horrific incident had taken place. The village was very safe, and they all lived like one big family. I was aware of it, as I always visited her during my school and college vacations, and it was a second home for me. Amu's husband was a wealthy landlord, and he owned nearly a quarter of the total land in the area. Amu was a very pious lady who always helped the poor, and no one returned empty-handed from her doorstep. There was an orphanage for destitute children and a home for senior citizens, totally funded by Amu. She owned many paddy and rubber plantations, from where she earned all the income. Her only son, Dev, turned out to be a lazy scoundrel. I never got along with him because he was always arrogant and rude, even as a schoolboy. He never helped in the family business. He kept bad company and often picked fights with the villagers, and sometimes even misbehaved with the ladies of the village. People tolerated him because of Amu, or he would have been languishing in jail for some time now. He had raped a poor, innocent girl, Minu, from the village, who eventually committed suicide, and Amu had hushed up the matter by compensating the girl's family handsomely, asking them to leave the village. Everyone in the village hated Dev. Being the only child, Amu had spoiled him rotten. She was blind to his faults and indulged him by fulfilling all his demands, and this took him further on the road of destruction. Too late, the consequences of her indulgence dawned upon Amu. Now she was keeping a tight fist on her money, which infuriated the son even more. And there were instances where he had raised his hand on his old invalid mother for money. Once he had hit Amu so bad that she had to be hospitalized for her injuries, but she told the doctors that she fell in the bathroom. He always treated Omna as a minion and left no chance to belittle her, which she ignored only for Amu. The next day, the police came to interrogate Amu. They said the post-mortem report revealed that the alcohol level was very high in the victim's blood, and he didn't put up any resistance to the murderer. They asked Amu if she suspected anyone. She said he had many enemies, and it was difficult to pinpoint any one person. "Are any valuables missing?" asked the policeman. Amu said she kept everything in the bank, except for a little money for her personal expenses in the house. The police ruled out robbery as a motive and felt it must be some personal enmity. They had also checked his call details, but did not find anything suspicious. The last rites of Amu's son took place the next day. Amu sat there, stony-faced and dry-eyed. The whole village had turned up for the funeral, more out of respect for Amu than for her son. The police summoned her son's friends to interrogate them. They told the police that they were all drinking together in the bar. And after some time, everyone left for their respective homes. Their call records were checked, their family interrogated, but no incriminating evidence was found against them. All the goons and miscreants from the village were rounded up for questioning. But the police couldn't find any concrete evidence against any of them, and they were let off, as they all had cast iron alibis. They interrogated everyone from the village, including my aunt and me. The investigation progressed, but nothing much came out of it. The police returned after 2 weeks and told Amu that they have found no clue to conclude. It was an outsider's job. They wanted to interrogate Amna, the cook, and the maid again. The cook and the maid said they both had left the house in the evening. Amna repeated her same story, supported by Amu. The police did not argue much, and they left, saying they would keep the investigation on, and if they get any further information, they would let her know. Soon, a month passed, and it was time for me to return home. I booked my flight for the following Sunday evening, 10 p.m. I wanted to go and meet Amu, but she's still in a state of shock and wasn't meeting anyone. My aunt was feeling bad that I had to witness this horrific incident, but I assured her that I was fine. At 8 p.m., the cab driver called to say he was waiting at the end of the road to avoid the potholes and asked me to walk up to the cab. I didn't mind, as I had only one bag, and it wasn't much of a distance. I bid my aunt goodbye, promising to visit her soon, and started walking down the road. I walked past Amu's house, which was in darkness, except for a night lamp in the living room. Amu slept early, by 8 p.m., and no one was allowed to disturb her once she was in bed. I heard some voices coming from her living room. Thinking she was still awake, I peeped from the window to shout out a final goodbye. The sight inside chilled my bones. Amu was walking towards the staircase erect and without any support. She climbed the stairs and within no time disappeared inside the room. Amna was sitting near the lamp and reading a book. I was too scared to move or speak and stood rooted to the spot. I managed to reach the cab and literally collapsed on the seat. Throughout my journey, that scene haunted me. Amu could walk? Why was she hiding this fact? Was she the one who climbed up and strangled her son? Or was it Amna? Did they tell lies to the police that they had heard Dev talking to someone the night of murder? I was befuddled by all these questions and couldn't find any answers. I reached the airport by 8:30, checked in and sat down in a corner, lost in thought. Mr. Roy! Mr. Roy! Someone was shaking me rudely. I saw 3 policemen standing before me. I was wondering, why were they calling my name? You will have to come with us, as you're under arrest for the murder of Amu's son, Dev, one of them said loudly. Before I could react, they handcuffed me and bundled me into their jeep. My aunt was already in the police station, crying and looking at me in disbelief. How can you arrest me? Do you have any proof? I shouted. The inspector looked at me with a gleam in his eyes and asked me, do you deny that you know Minu? The girl who committed suicide after she was raped. Weren't you in love with her? Isn't it true, the moment you realized that Amu's son had raped her, you wanted to kill him? Didn't you come with a plan to murder Dev? He was throwing questions at me, one after the other, without waiting for an answer. The inspector said that after interrogating almost everyone from the village, he was perplexed, as he couldn't find any evidence against anyone. So, on a hunch, he went to meet Minu's father, who lived in another district. The father was still grieving his daughter's death. He told the inspector that his daughter was a talented artist and had received a scholarship from a reputed arts college, which had been her dream. He proudly showed all her paintings to the inspector. Among those paintings was one of mine, which the inspector instantly recognized. He asked the father about the picture. The father told him that his daughter was in love with this boy. And that moment, the inspector knew it was me. He said that night, I left the house after my aunt went to sleep, knowing she takes sleeping pills and won't wake up until morning. I waited for Dev outside his house and persuaded him to invite me in on the pretext of discuss something important. The moment we went to his room, I strangulated him. I pleaded with them that it's all just a bunch of lies and false implications. I can never murder anyone, but everything I said was falling in deaf ears. I wanted to tell them about Amu's secret, but no one would believe me. My mind was numb. I was trying to recollect the events of that night before I heard the piercing scream, but everything was blank. I couldn't remember anything. Was it possible that I had murdered Dev? I felt an icy grip squeezing my heart. What would you like, sir? Sir, we need you. Ed, please don't panic. Tell me what happened. A man died at 4th Rose Street in Pie A Trust Bakery. Pray, tell his name. Robert Jr. Business tycoon Robert Jr. A sudden alarm switches on in my mind. You are right, sir. I hang up the phone. A new case is like coffee shots for me. Sudden shots of energy with a sudden smell of success. Being a private detective was tough in 1959. The remnants of World War were still haunting people's minds. So basically, everyone was behind food and money. Hence, the rise of murders and death of rich men were the constant headline of newspapers and weekly magazines. The police were sometimes behind the culprit, or were sometimes the culprit themselves. My first successful case was about Dorothy Maddock, a murder mystery that had shaken the neighborhood. At that time, I was 19, who had only read Sherlock Holmes as his curriculum and used to write some articles for a newspaper column. Back then, I took the case for justice, not for fame or success. With my wit and observation, I nabbed the murderer to everyone's surprise and dismay. The success of the case made fame kiss my toes, but the police grew cold feelings towards me. First, the bitterness was one-sided. Later, with the continued collision of our thinking and ideas, it became a competition for us to prove each other wrong. Coming to the case, Robert Jr. was famous as well as an established businessman. He was constantly in the newspaper due to the rounds of an affair between him and a beautiful singer. The case was a goldmine for the press because now it had glamour and stardom. I reached the spot. It was a small sit-in bakery with musty brown walls and white windows. It was unusual for a rich man to dine here. People were thronging outside the bakery to view the sudden death. Police were having a tough time trying to control the mob. I honk my Ford car on purpose to gain the attention of the press. In seconds, a group of photographers and cameramen with their journalists were rushing towards my car. I took some time to come out of my car, but when I came out, I was surrounded by the sudden flashes which blind my irises. There is a constant tugging and screaming of journalists at my face. I raise my hand to silence everyone, to bring their attention towards me. I will ensure that the culprit is caught and the innocents are given justice. With the help of the police, we will solve the crime as soon as possible. Till then, please maintain your integrity and work ethics. I make a straight beeline towards the bakery, where I'm coldly welcomed by Inspector Houston. Don't come here, fella, without any prior information. Take your media attention somewhere else. He smirks. It would be better if you pay enough attention to your duty, rather than observing my style and sensibility. He stares at me and spits on the ground. So what are the details of the case, Mr. Houston? According to the witness, Robert entered the bakery with singer Sasha. They ordered a lime tart with lemonade. Then, in the middle of the conversation, an argument burst open. A few seconds later, he asks for water, which was given by Sasha from her bottle. In moments, he clenched his head and passed out. So, where is the singer now? She is in the basement of the bakery, hiding from the press. Bring in all the witnesses, and let's interview each one there itself. We agreed to investigate the scene first. Nothing was weird, nor there was anything suspicious. Then we interrogated each eyewitness. First was the singer Sasha, a beautiful woman in her early 20s, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her cheeks were stained by mascara, and her lips quivered from the constant crying. It was odd that a young girl like her was interested in a man who was in his late 40s. But it is not odd in a patriarchal society. I gave her my handkerchief. A man gotta respect a lady's emotion. So, Miss Sasha, what happened during your brunch at the bakery? Robert called me here to discuss some private matters. He was stressed for the past few weeks. Can you guess what he was about to discuss? I ask. She moves her head from side to side with few sobs. Miss Sasha, when Robert asked for water. Instead, You could have called the waiter. Why did you provide it from your bottle? Robert liked clean filter water. He always used to question the quality of water at restaurants. Hence, I used to carry my own source. Did you hand over the bottle to the police? She nodded. The next person was the waitress, the only witness who was present at the bakery. A young woman in her mid-20s, with hazel eyes and raven black hair. She was confident with her body language and was least affected by the sudden death. What's your name? Rebecca Taylor. For how long you are working here? Since the past few weeks. Can you describe what happened this morning? Mr. Robert was coming to our bakery for the last few days, but this time he came with Miss Sasha. He ordered tart, and she ordered lemonade. It's wrong to eavesdrop on anybody's conversation, so I was at my counter cleaning the stoves. But in the middle of their conversation, they started arguing. Mr. Robert was demanding Miss Sasha to leave her career. Then he asked for water, to which she gave her own bottle, and in a matter of seconds, he clenched his head and fell on the ground. Where was the owner of the shop? Every morning, the owner goes to buy the supplies for the rest of the day. He went out as usual. The next person was the cleaner boy, who was not the witness. But he was there in the basement of the bakery when the incident took place. What's your name? Vade Danish. So, Vade Miss Rebecca told me that you went to the basement to take a puff of the cigarette. Sometimes you had to twist other people's confession to extract the truth. No, sir. Miss Rebecca had seen a few mice in our basement, so I went there to get rid of them. Okay, so for how long are you working here? 2 years. Everything was done. We talked to the witness. We investigated the scene, but couldn't find a clue. The police, as well as I, was waiting for the medical reports of the corpse, but it had a lot of time to it. Miss Sasha was on house arrest, and other people were under observation. I took a few days to search for the missing links in this case, but could not find one. This morning, I decided to give a visit to the bakery. Through the glass windows, I could see Rebecca taking orders from the customer and Vade helping his owner. I enter inside, and Rebecca gasps her breath seeing me. Did I frighten you, Miss Rebecca? No. I mean, yes. The incident has made us face the worst fears that we never could have expected. What will you like, sir? She asks in a humble tone. Oh, nothing. I just want to sit and relax for a few seconds. Nothing else. She goes away, leaving me in silence. I try to connect the information that I had about this case, but couldn't figure out any missing links. A force knocks at my temples. The migraine bouts were reoccurring every morning. I press my fingers at my head to ease out the pain. I search my pockets for the container of pills, but I couldn't find them. Sir, are you okay? I see Rebecca beside my table. Yeah, everything is fine. Nothing to bother about. She puts a tray in front of me. It has herb tea and strawberry custard. It's for your migraine, sir. It will soothe your nerves. I thank her and dig in my spoon. because I have skipped my breakfast this morning. At the last spoon, a thought occurred to me. To clear it, I needed to meet the doctor who was examining the body as well as the reports. I rush out of the bakery without paying the bill and race my car to the hospital. Doctor, did Robert had a migraine? Because according to the witness, he clenched his head before passing out. Did he get a migraine attack while having the arguments with the singer? I don't know, lad. Maybe he had, maybe he hadn't. The technology isn't so developed to bring in the conclusions. What did you find in the reports? The mystery is that we couldn't find anything with his body. The brain and his other organs were intact. But his blood reports are weird. What does the report say? That during their argument, there was the sudden spike of salts in his blood flow. He had large quantities of salts in his body during his death, which we call hypernatremia. In hypernatremia, a person typically feels thirsty. The most serious symptoms of hypernatremia result from brain dysfunction. Severe hypernatremia can lead to confusion, muscle twitching, seizures, coma, and death. So, how did this condition occur in his body? Any clue? We couldn't find that, but the bottle that Miss Sasha gave had typically weird ingredients and salts. I think you should further investigate it. The police were informed about the reports, and we both rushed to the villa of the singer, who is currently under house arrest. Miss Sasha, we found salts and weird ingredients in your bottle, and Mr. Robert died from severe hypernatremia. The Justice of Sword points at you, because before he had passed away, he demanded water from you. I drink salt-infused water to keep my voice intact and to keep throat infections away. She started to sob and pleaded in front of us that she was innocent. She was taken in for police custody, and the court will manage the rest of the hearing. We gave a press conference about the case and addressed questions of the media. After a few days, I visited the bakery again to pay my pending bill and to meet the staff. The staff members were happy to see me and greeted me with warm smiles. I paid my bill and talked to each staff personally. Rebecca was happy and asked me about my migraine conditions. That day, how did you know that I got a mild migraine attack? My mother was suffering from migraine, so I recognized the symptoms really fast. So, you live with your mother? No, sir. My mother passed away a year ago. I live on my own. I'm sorry to hear about your mother. Well, take this. I take $50 from my wallet and hand it over to her. Take it as your tip and use it wisely. She takes the money and her warm finger brush with mine. Her cheeks tinge like strawberries, and she gives me a peck on the cheek. I smile at her and walk towards the door. Sir, please do come here again. I turn around and say, I will come if I have time. I know you will. I nod to her and sit into my car and drive to my home with a smile. I was watching a soap opera on television while cooking my dinner. Then I hear a knock on the front door. Who is there? I shout, switching off the television. Sir, it's me, Daniel. I take a sigh of relief and opened the door. Daniel was my counterpart, as well as my personal spy. He used to track the backstory of the cases, as well as the victim. So, Daniel, what brings you here? The back history of Robert Jr. Tell me the juicy details. He was a drug dealer in South Carolina and was once arrested while delivering a load of cocaine capsules. This businessman earns the white money with the help of the black money, I said. Listen, he used to execute his plans with the help of a female doctor. But after his arrest, she was absconding and still is on the wanted list. Here, see her photo. I take the file to view, and my head spins. I reach the kitchen counter for support. I could not believe my eyes. It was Rebecca. What happened? Daniel asked. She is the waitress who works at the bakery where Robert had died. For a few seconds, we glared at each other and rushed to our cars. I sped up my car, not worrying about getting a fine. I rush into the bakery and shout, "Where is Rebecca?" Vade rushes towards me with a note in his hand. "Rebecca quit her job this morning and left a note for you." I take the note and read, "Dear Thomas, take a warm coffee with a heavy breakfast to curb your migraine attacks. Before sleeping, drink a nice herbal tea. It will cure the migraine away. And what else will you like, sir? Your friend, Rebecca." Something catches my eye across the street, and I rush towards the window to see clearly. It's Rebecca, with rendered auburn hairs and a wicked smile. She waves at me, gives a flying kiss, and in the next second disappears. Betrayal. Mr. Nicholas, you have been caught for breaking and entering every house in the world once a year for as long as anyone can remember. That was what the judge said. Anything to say in your defense? Your Honor, I was delivering presents. For children, they were happy, stuttered Santa. Liar! You gave me a toy doll when I was 12 years old, yelled an adult. Well, I thought you wanted one, said Santa, wondering if this was a nightmare. And you didn't wipe your feet on the mat when you came in, said a very tall and skinny woman who was the shape of a pole. Now I have to walk around my house with the smell of reindeer dung. It's that bad? I sleep next to my reindeers, and they don't smell that bad. One very fat man, who looked like if you threw him from the tallest building, he would bounce, said, "One day when I was little, I woke up on Christmas and went to my Christmas tree. I saw a box of chocolates, but guess what? It was out of date," guessed the judge. "It was covered in reindeer poop," said the skinny lady. "It was half-eaten?" asked another man. "Wrong. He had put it under the tree. I couldn't reach it." Everyone let out a gasp, as if it was worse than what they said. The judge banged his hammer against the wooden plate. All right, it's settled. A lifetime in prison. He was shipped off to a prison for magical things. There he met the Tooth Fairy and Frosty the Snowman, a black bird with an injured wing, and a man called Jeff, who claimed he was a muffin, and Neil Gaiman. He did not know what Neil Gaiman was doing in there, but he told wonderful stories of Norse gods and a girl called Coraline. Meanwhile, the elves were relaxing in the North Pole. Every day, they would congratulate each other on how they got rid of Mr. Claus, and that it was about time that they got rid of the fatty. The reindeers were happy because they thought Santa stinked. But Mrs. Claus was the most excited. She could finally fulfill her dreams of playing video games all day, every day. Thousands of years passed, and Santa became more restless in his cage. The Tooth Fairy had been eaten by his bird more times than able to be counted. And the Immortal. Gaiman had told thousands of tales already, and Frosty had melted more than 1,000,000 drops of water now. And Jeff, well, he sat there more than 1,000,000 minutes already. Everyone was tired, and they were sick of seeing the same things every day: stone, metal, and plastic. One night, when the guards were walking past Santa's cell, he extended one thin finger and curled it around the key. He then pulled back his hand and put the key under his tongue in his mouth. He later took out the key and began to try and push it in on the other side. His fingers fumbled, and unfortunately, he dropped the key. From inside his pocket, he retrieved a foldable walking stick and began to prod at the key, trying to pull it back, when a mosquito landed on the back of his hand and sank its sucker into his flesh. Santa dropped the stick. He slapped the insect, turning it into a fat pile of greenish-yellow slime. He told his bird to go in and fetch the stick. The bird did as he was told. Santa continued to prod at the key when Neil Gaiman couldn't take it anymore, and said that he should tell the bird to go and fetch the key instead of the stick. "You're right, so smart," said Santa in understanding. "Go get the key." A few hours later, he had escaped his cell and was now unlocking the cells of his friends. "All right, Muffin Man, you're okay now," said Santa. "I need my rock to turn into a muffin again," said Jeff gloomily. "Where is it then?" sighed Santa. "It's on the second floor of the third room to the right." "Have you been there?" asked Mr. Claus. "Duh, what do you think?" "Then why didn't you take it yourself?" "I didn't know how," said Jeff. It took some time, but the group eventually found the staircase and got into the specified room. Santa picked up the rock and said, "What do you mean you didn't know how?" asked Santa. Suddenly, 2 security guards stepped out of the shadows and told them to freeze and drop the rock. Santa leaped out of the closest window, thinking that his reindeers would catch him. He instead landed on a very fat moose in the middle of a barn. "Come down here, it's safe," he yelled at the window. One by one, they each plopped down Gaiman on a horse, Jeff on a pig, Frosty on a cow, and the Tooth Fairy on a very cross farmer. The fairy produced a chain of teeth out of her dress pocket and wrapped it around the farmer, like one would do to a horse. The group, holding on to their animals, eventually rode to the town where Santa's trial had been held, just in time for Christmas Eve. At the first house, belonging to the lady that had said her floor stank of reindeer dung, Frosty gave her some sanitizer under her tree. At the second house, belonging to the adult who complained about having been given a doll at the age of 12, Gaiman gave her 2 black button eyes and a sewing needle. And at the last house, belonging to the man, had complained about the chocolates. Santa gave him Jeff in his muffin form and put him on a plate next to the tree. Santa thanked everyone, and he went back to his home, the North Pole. The elves and reindeers groaned and sighed when they saw his familiar red suit. They kicked him out and built a wall around the village of Mrs. Claus. Santa realized that he was tired of seeing the elves, so he trained his bird to be a professional polar bear and penguin trainer, and everyone lived happily ever after.